African cities are under lockdown and their governments are working hard to curb the spread of the virus. Most economic sectors don't have adequate financial reserve to withstand such a heavy decrease of revenues. The shutdown of airports and public transport puts workers and customers at a serious peril. Transport systems often do not have social security nets for workers and families. There are not enough daily economic activities to keep food on the table for everyone.
As the first speaker from Africa, I'm delighted to welcome Ms. Pam Belcher-Taylor. She's the mayor of Paynesville, Liberia. She will share with us some insights how COVID-19 is mobility affecting in the African city. Thank you.
Hello, I am Mayor Pam Belcher-Taylor, the 11th mayor of the city of Paynesville, Liberia, West Africa. Today, I'm going to briefly speak to you about the transportation system in my city during the COVID-19 pandemic. Before we begin, I must say that everyone working with me on this video have socially distanced themselves from me. Now, let me give you a brief history of my city, Paynesville. Paynesville is the largest city in Liberia geographically. According to our 2008 census, our city had over 400,000 inhabitants. We are a bustling city that depends largely on public transport. I'd like to give you a few facts about my city. We have the largest open-air market in Liberia. We are the home of our national stadium, the Samuel Doe Stadium. Our state TV and radio stations are run out of our city of Paynesville. The Coca-Cola bottling factory is also owned and housed in Paynesville. The ELWA hospital. The significance of this hospital was that the ELWA hospital was used as our first and second isolation centers during the Ebola outbreak in 2014. And it is also estimated that more transport vehicles ply the streets of our city every day, taking people to and fro from their homes to workplaces and other events that they have to go to. There is no doubt that our transport sector has been hit by the coronavirus pandemic, a downward change in sources of revenue and production of goods and services. The Transport Union has heeded the government's pronouncement through the Ministry of Transport and the Ministry of Health to implement and practice and observe measures that have been put in place to stop the spread of the virus. Most of our transportation activities are being done by the private sector. Residents of Paynesville largely commute from one point to another by use of commercial taxis, buses, tricycles, and motorcycles. Taxis in our cities previously took 5 passengers, tricycles 4 passengers, and motorcycles 2 passengers, all excluding the drivers. Regulations have been put in place for buses to observe social distancing, for taxis to now only take 3 passengers, motorcycles 1 passenger, and tricycles 2 passengers. People have been mandated by government to commute from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily due to a lockdown that has been imposed. The impact has caused passengers high increase in transportation fares. The impact on Liberia and the wider economy has changed our cities as people struggle to avoid the infection. Transportation providers must cope with this new normal and its huge impact on the transportation sector and wider economy. According to the Ministry of Transport, transportation providers are reporting on the financial impact of the stay-at-home order. Many commuters now have to work from home, thus reducing the need for public transport. In my city, Paynesville, the informal sector plays a pivotal role in the economic growth of the city, as transport is linked to economic development and dependent on fares and subsidies. Loss of revenue is inevitable. Besides loss of revenue, higher costs associated with having vehicles and other facilities have increased, which will put an additional burden on public transport. Also, travel demand is decreasing globally due to the spread of COVID-19. The transport unions in Paynesville and passengers are excited that the measures are helping them not to fall prey to COVID-19, even though they are facing some challenging times and hardship. During this pandemic and the lockdown, there have been some lessons learned, and I want to share with you 3 of the lessons that we at the City Corporation of Paynesville have learned and have tried to address. I would like to say 1, COVID-19 has enforced the conventional existence of law on the city on commercial transport and also on the reduction of seating capacity to passengers. It has also led to the reintroduction of the wash protocol at the transport terminals, enforcing commuters to wash their hands before and leaving vehicles. Also, the need for protection of employees, staff, infrastructure, and passengers. Employees are the most important asset in this chain of the transport sector. They must therefore be given special protection, both as individuals in their functions as drivers, supervisors, managers, etc. Employees come in close contact with customers. The introduction of compulsory facial masks on public vehicles and in public places is mandatory. Public transportation is a major challenge on the congested streets of Paynesville and its environs. We can tackle the long-term implications of this crisis by planning and implementing policies. Introduction of new health protocols to manage the public transport sector, constitute a Paynesville City Corporation task force to coordinate, enforce, monitor, and evaluate the new public health standards of the transportation sector. Also, ensuring that every transportation terminal has a hand washing station, and the transport union enforces all protocols mandated by national governments, the Paynesville City Corporation, World Health Organizations, and other partners. We also have campaigns for training of vulnerable road users, communication, information, and awareness. I'd like to dedicate this video to all health workers around the globe. Without you, it could have been worse. But in Union Strong, success is sure. God bless the world. God bless Liberia.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mayor. We are now heading over to the head of the Liberian Police Force, Mr. Patrick Sudue.
Honorable Sudue, the government amid the COVID-19 pandemic has introduced a number of measures to protect the transport sector and to promote mobility. Can you give us an overview of the prominent measures that have been taken so far?
Well, thank you very much. The Liberia government have instituted a lot of health measures to curtail the spread of the virus in the various community. So what the government put into place was the entire country should observe social distancing. And in observing social distancing, the travelers were asked to wear a nose mask, and the passenger should also wear a nose mask. In the interim, the government also reduced the amount of passenger on board each vehicle. They usually, before the pandemic, taxis were carrying 4 at the back and 1 at the front. But because of this pandemic, they will be taking 3 at the back and 1 at the front. The tricycle will be carrying 2 passengers at the back, and the motorcycles will be carrying 1 passenger at a time. The measure is put into place so as to observe social distancing within these vehicles. So you'll find out that the issue of masks is not much of a problem in Liberia because we are doing our tailor and other people, factory members are doing locally made masks because the N95 mask you'll find out is kind of expensive. So you can see this is a local made mask, and this is another local made mask. We have another one here, and this one was designed for the Liberia National Police by one of our tailors. I think you can see the symbol of the Liberia National Police. Okay, these masks are sold 25 cents, 50 cents, or $1, which is not even equivalent to the US dollar. So this is far less than a US dollar. So it's affordable by everybody because the N95 mask is a disposable mask and it's cost intensive to keep buying masks every day, and we don't have that much on the local market. So with the help of the production of these locally made masks, I mean, it makes it very easy for the motorists, the pedestrian, and everybody to carry a mask.
And what are 3 key lessons you learned from these measures?
Well, the 3 key lessons learned from COVID-19 globally, I would say we need to check the health ecosystem of every institution around the world, and we should be prepared. We should be prepared to fight any other war that will come out other than COVID-19 war. Don't be surprised in the future there could be another outbreak. How strong, how prepared will the world be? So it is now that we have learned this lesson from COVID, we have to ensure the ecosystem of the health sector is strengthened to fight another war. There should be an early warning system. The early warning system will also put into place check marks for people who are traveling in and out of various countries, because you cannot stop people from interacting, you cannot stop people from connecting globally. So what do? If we have that early warning system, we can curtail the spread of the disease. When the pandemic started, the early warning system was not looked at. This is the reason why you see other countries were highly hit. So it's about time that the early warning system be put into place so as to enhance the spread of this particular virus. And the third one I would look at would be social distancing. We need to practice social distancing now. Right now, it is kind of strange to people looking at your loved ones, standing far apart from your loved one to speak to them, or people now hugging, kissing, shaking hands. I mean, kind of strange. But now the world has changed. Coronavirus has changed the world. So we need to learn social distancing now, because take for instance, just the common flu. You can have a flu and I come to you, talk to you, probably shake your hand, and I didn't wash my hand and use my hand on my face. I could catch a cold the next minute. So SARS and smallpox, chickenpox, these are communicable diseases that you need to observe social distancing. So when we're learning now, and if there's a future outbreak, I can show you that we'll already be used to it. It wouldn't be much of a problem than what we are faced today.
I know that the COVID-19 pandemic impacted the country in some ways. So looking at the transportation system and the general economy, what impact do you see?
Well, the transportation system has been hit very hard. Like I previously said, the drivers have a very short time to run, and they take less passengers, and they have to buy a fuel for their vehicle. They have to do maintenance on their vehicle, and you find out that those maintenance or purchases of fuel, the prices remain the same. It has not been reduced, so they are feeling the heavy pinch of the entire process because they are getting less passengers, adhering to the social distancing, but again, the fuel price is not reduced, the spare part price has not reduced. So I mean, if they have problems, they have to go pay that amount it's supposed to pay. You cannot go to the main spare parts store and say that, look, I'm not carrying the adequate passenger, I don't have the time to run all day, so please assist me to reduce the price. That wouldn't work. So I mean, they are being hit very hard. When it comes to the economy, our economy is hit very, very hard because in Liberia we have a kind of budget, a cash-based budget. Our budget solely and wholly depends on the revenue generated from the various companies and other institutions. But what is happening here now is that these companies that are not having part to do with the COVID-19, these companies are being closed because of the lockdown. So right now you only have supermarket, those people who are providing food services, hospital services, pharmacies. These are institutions that are open. The rest of the other institutions are closed. So you find out that government cannot generate the needed revenues from the agencies, so it become a big burden for our economy. The free port people are not importing goods. Globally, almost everywhere is shut down. Goods are not coming, so you find out that our economy is hardly hit because we have a cash-based economy. What we generate is what circulates within our budget, so it becomes very difficult for us.
Looking at implications, what will be the long-term implications of this crisis on transport, planning, and policy, including road safety for Liberia?
Well, the long term would be that we have to ensure that we educate our drivers. We have to ensure that they are trained in a way that they will know how to read road signs. They will know how to drive according to the mileage that they should be driving, whether in the school zone, the highway, or residential area. These are training that we need to inculcate in the system for the drivers to follow the rule. Because if you follow the rules of the road, it's difficult for you to have accident. We'll also ensure that the road inspection or road worthiness will be one of the priorities. Because if you have a vehicle that is not road worthy, definitely, I mean, that vehicle could go while driving, tire could burst, and the vehicle could somersault. That will lead to a lot of fatality. So we have to do road inspection, worthiness, and we have to ensure that we color code our vehicles. Our vehicle will be color coded so we can know which vehicle is running in which area, and so as to reduce all of the vehicle coming in one area. Take for instance in Monrovia, you find all of the vehicle want to run only in the center of the city. That also causes congestion. It causes huge traffic also. So there's a long run program that I want to do to color code our vehicle. And also in the future, we are anticipating talking to members of the government to also relate to our lawmakers to see how we can revisit the 1974 vehicle and traffic law. There are a lot of laws within that law that are obsolete. We have to check those laws, or take for instance, now that we are observing social distances, our law states that we have to carry a certain amount of person in the vehicle. So that law has to be revisited so as to reduce the amount of occupant in the vehicle, so we can also observe our social distancing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So what about the TUMI? For instance, I think it should be out of the street. Is that part of what affected you?
Yeah. Like TUMI really affected us.
Okay. So how much do you make now?
1,500, now 1,600.
But before you make up to 3,000
3,000, yeah.
And how much do we pay for it?
I pay $850 for the car.
How much have you got?
I'm not yet $300 for all of it.
Since when you started using the bike?
I bought this car, February only, yeah.
But you think if we are not had this crisis, the coronavirus crisis, you think you have got a huge sum of what you spent?
You know, I've been getting like $700 for all of it.
So because of the crisis and the situation that go with it, you have not achieved even up to you. And this is a business you're making?
That's a business I'm making.
Besides this, do you do any other work?
No work at the moment.
And you got family?
I have family, I have my brother, children, and other people.
I guess you did saving, you saved from previous activities of running for people before you bought it back.
Yes.
Our next guest is from Nigeria. Mr. Emmanuel John is the director of the Transportation Growth Initiative, short TGI. That's a non-profit sustainable transport organization based in Abuja.
Again, there are quite a number of success stories, a number of good initiatives that we can put out there, what you have mentioned. Number one is the reduction in commuter in BRTs and metro across public transport systems in Africa. For instance, Lagos BRT was operating at 60%, but Cairo Metro and Gautrain in Johannesburg operated at 50% capacity, and that is a positive development. And Gautrain, or rather Cairo Metro, went further to increase the number of rail and metro cars to be able to manage the upsurge in demand as a result of the restriction, also as a result of reduction in vehicle passengers. So these are positive developments that we need to commend and recommend to those who are not doing it. The third one is the president of Ghana was very creative and dynamic when he led as the first country to relax the lockdown. Africa is a poor continent, a continent where 80% of the population survive on daily income, a continent where a huge figure live below the poverty line, a country where disease and poverty is ravaging the people over time. And so a lockdown, a sustained lockdown actually means disaster for us. I mean, doing that, he went against all odds, against all medical and popular opinions to relax the lockdown. And that became an inspiration for other countries to follow suit. And I think it's a commendable initiative. I also want to mention the timely increase in the number of running metros in Cairo, which I already mentioned, and then the smart, very beautiful promotion of cycling that was done by the president of Uganda in Kampala, where he closed down, or rather suspended, public transport and asked citizens to go ride a bicycle. And today we have a sort of cycling pool in that country because the president thinks so. And that presents for us an example of what needs to be done to ensure that people are riding bicycles in the city. The bicycle is actually the best social distancing mode of transport that needs to be adopted, that needs to be promoted. Of course, in the developed world, there are pop-up bike lanes, and there are different measures and initiatives being taken. In our climate, there are no infrastructure, but we think that the president and the entire administrations at different levels at the state levels, at the city levels, could do something to ensure that cycling goes into play in enhancing transportation, particularly in times like this. Next. Let me also mention the odd and the even number initiative that was carried out in Addis Ababa, where private vehicles were asked to be separated into two. Odd numbers comes on Monday, even numbers comes on Tuesday. And that assisted in reducing congestion in a time like this and ensure free traffic flow. By and large, these are a few of the initiatives I think were wonderful across Africa, among others, which I may not know.
Thank you. It is thanks to people like Emmanuel John that change is really happening, and we hope that many more of you following his example and get active. If you have questions or comments, text us via Twitter, Facebook, using the hashtag TUMI TV or via mail.
Maisha nimekuwa ghali, sio kama kitambo. Inakuwa kidogo kutafuta unga inakuwa ni shida bwana. Kitambo mambo ilikuwa sawa, lakini matumaini mambo itakuwa sawa baadaye.
Mazee imekuwa ni ngori bana, Jose, unaona kazi imekuwa chini. Hakuna watu wanaogopa kusafiri, sijui wamejificha wapi bana. Alafu akusanitize mtu kwanza kabla ingia kwa gari, naona, alafu akuwe na mask. Alafu pia gari unasanitize ukibeba watu, ukishukisha bado.
Abiria turuhusu kuingia ndani ya gari bila mask. Na pia tuko na mimi mwenyewe na sanitizer yangu hapa. Akiingia na mosha mkono, kondukta na mosha mkono. Hii route ni ya Jacaranda, kutoka Kayole, Jacaranda mpaka hapa Donom. Kitambo kabla hii mambo na corona tulikuwa tuna kila gari ingepata shilingi 3,000, 2,500. Lakini ile mshahara driver na conductor ni ile kulingana na vile mnafanya kazi.
Saizi tu ni 1,000. Bana Jose, mimi niko na mazee msupa, mazee na watu wawili maana wako chuo bado. Mazee wife mazee yuko job. Mimi tu ndio nafanya tu job. Hata sijui akiwalai. Naomba tu hata ishe tu maana mazee kazi irudi kama kawaida, irudi tu kama normal.
Sasa inabidi tunakaa hivyo tu, tunangoja vile itakuwa baada hii ugonjwa, hii virusi vya corona vitakapoisha, tuone vile itakuwa.
I take you now to Uganda, where we can speak to Amanda Ngabirano, who is an urban and regional planner lecturing at Makerere University. Amanda has a passion that has earned her a nickname, Madam Bicycle. We're looking forward to listen to your thoughts on our functioning and inclusive mobility planning system.
Sectors that have been affected. For instance, the informal sector is huge in this country and in most African countries. In the case of Kampala, the informal sector really was employing many people, or is employing many people When we go to mobility, many people are employed in the taxi industry, in the border industry, and all these people are somehow affected. Public transport, which is majorly the informal taxi transport, was banned to ensure that people are safe and can move with the social distancing factored in. I can imagine that that is going to be a blow to them for all these weeks sitting down and not able to work. Other people who have been living from hand to mouth, for instance, the street vendors, people that have been doing simple jobs by the roadsides, cooking for the informal sector employees. All this is something that government definitely ought to look into. But in terms of mobility, it has opened up a new opportunity that cycling is actually a mode of transport. Here, the mindset has been negative towards cycling, and now most people have no other way of getting around, so they understand and appreciate that, after all, cycling is a mode of transport like any other. I think what else has to be done in our situation? Infrastructure planning. And this infrastructure planning could be to facilitate better public transport that we have, efficiency of our public transport, however informal it is, good infrastructure is required. Then also new travel management or traffic management is necessary to reduce congestion in some places and also improve the quality of public space. I see a situation of, for instance, removing on-street parking and replacing it with the cycling lanes, or going for the squares where people park their cars and replace it with an open place for people who can do their businesses, cafes, and ensure that people regain their lives through mobility changes. But again, the need for awareness creation is very big. There has to be investment in change in mindset, especially to women, that they can also jump on the bike, or they can also walk and do what they have to do, move to wherever they want to move, because they are human beings like any other. Of course, the best way to push for an inclusive transport system is to ensure that all modes are catered for by governments. That way, everybody, no matter the mode, will be catered for and will be important in the planning system. But for cycling, it's a bit unique. In our situation, most women actually do not know how to ride. So it means that in these hard times that private cars were banned, public transport was banned, most women definitely were cut off from mobility options. So it's a message that women should be encouraged to ride, but again, it's a message to governments that planning for a safe city will automatically encourage women to walk, to ride, to drive, to move like any other human being. So the best approach is to integrate mobility planning into the city planning system and ensure that all modes of transport are given room and attention.
Thank you for these inspiring words and actions. This crisis has led to much more cycling. Let's hope it is a wake-up call for cities and officials to build necessary infrastructure.
And now we are heading over to Marcela. She's going to talk about the comparison between urban mobility during COVID-19 between African and Latin American cities.
Urban mobility in cities like Bogota and Cape Town is challenging for different reasons. In Bogota, traffic, bad air quality makes movement precarious for most people. In Cape Town, poor public transport combined with long distances, which are the result of apartheid planning, means that people are spending disproportionate amounts of time and income when traveling. COVID has brought to light something that these two cities share in common, and that is inequality. And those who are bearing the brunt of this crisis are those who are having to travel the longest distances. This combined with the fact that the transport systems that are provided to those essential workers that are having to travel are under strain. And as the economic impact increases, will continue to be under strain, making this gap between those who have and who have not bigger. In addition, safety is a huge concern in both cities. And the reality is that people are desperate, these people are hungry, unemployment is on the rise, and this is going to have a very direct impact on the safety of our transport systems. The concept of open streets has come up during COVID, and of course creating space for bicycles and for pedestrians can be part of the answer. But I think we need to recognize the enormity of this situation. And the fact is that COVID is resulting in great human suffering. We must start from that place of empathy before we start jumping into, opportunities and how to speed up processes that might leave some people behind. What's really important is that we emphasize on those who need us, who need society the most. And those are essential workers, for instance. So when I have dreamt of a car-free city, which I've done for many, many years, and I imagine what the future could hold, it is very inspiring to see that people are taking onto the streets and that this concept is resonating across the world, but it's not appropriate in every case. And so in a city like Cape Town and a city like Bogota, where people are traveling 50 kilometers or more to their place of work, it's not necessarily the right approach. And so I think what's really important here is to prioritize needs. We must prioritize the movement of essential workers. Things like recreation and health are also very important, but they cannot come at the cost of ensuring that people are moving freely and safely. Again, particularly those who are carrying the largest burden of our society during this COVID crisis. The impact of COVID on active mobility and whether that demand will change or increase during and after the crisis is very real. It has a response at the government level and at the community level. In the first instance, local government in Bogota, for instance, has enabled temporary bicycle lanes to encourage people and enable people to move that way. In cities like Cape Town, where lockdown has been very strict for several weeks now, that hasn't happened. And it might happen. But what this crisis has highlighted for me is that community organizing at the local level is part of that new normal. And so part of that is that people are moving around in their communities a lot more, which is going to mean that there will be more walking, more cycling, evidently. But with that, the impact that it has on active mobility, in my view, is that those solutions need to be found at that hyper-local level, so that people co-create what is going to enable mobility in safety, in sharing of public space in a way that takes people forward based in this new context that we have. And so if there is one lesson that we can take forward is that we can't have this copy and paste approaches when it comes to active mobility, and that is great to share experiences from what's happening in other parts of the world, but that at the end of the day, it is people in their own communities that need to decide how they incorporate this ways of, or this forms of active mobility, always ensuring that people are going to be enabled movement first and foremost. The impact of COVID on women and how we move around our cities is going to be similar to this point around exacerbating inequality in our cities, because there's pre-existing conditions around inappropriate infrastructure, a culture of disrespect, and all the reasons why women have a different experience of cities is going to be exacerbated by the crisis. And I think this is where asking those difficult questions around social inequality, around social justice, how is it that we create cities that are more embracing and more inclusive is going to be really important. And they're going to be long-term processes. So I think the point here is not to jump into sort of new programs because they seem like a good idea, but that we take the time to really interrogate those issues around gender, also those issues around inequality, when we think about what is it going to be most appropriate in terms of urban mobility for different cities.
Hello, this is Tom Bishop from the NGO Amend. I'm very happy to have been asked to talk to you a little bit about some research we've been doing on transport and road safety during the time of COVID-19 in Ghana, Mozambique and Tanzania. The information I'm presenting here was gathered by Amend staff through a series of mini-surveys involving telephone interviews and road user observations over the last couple of months in April and May this year. One of the most interesting findings is that motorcycle taxis, which are always popular in Tanzania during normal times, continue to provide a very important service during the pandemic. So much so that the city government in Dar es Salaam has lifted restrictions that are normally in place on motorcycle taxis entering the city centre. And one of the reasons why motorcycle taxis are so popular is because passengers have become afraid of the public minibuses, the dala-dalas, afraid of the risk of transmission because of all that close contact in public minibuses. And that's despite efforts by the authorities and by the bus operators at physical distancing, where now no standing is allowed, so there's less congestion on the buses. But despite that, we're finding that buses are less popular and people are using motorcycle taxis more. Some passengers feel that on motorcycle taxis, the risk of infection is low as they're sitting behind the rider. And some riders, interestingly from a road safety point of view, have started wearing helmets to protect from passengers' breath. At many of the motorcycle and three-wheeler stands throughout the city, hand-washing facilities are provided. And some riders have even started cleaning the seat and the handrails of their motorcycles between trips. But that's not to say that all riders and all passengers are taking preventive measures. And in rural areas, use of preventive measures is very low. In Mozambique, bus transport remains popular, and that's partly because there are few alternatives. In all of the countries where we've done our surveys, Ghana, Mozambique and Tanzania, with schools being closed, we're finding that children are spending more time in the street than usual, even though in some places local governments are trying to encourage parents to keep their children at home. What's really happening is that children are out there playing in the street and also running errands. Although in Ghana especially, we found that streets in general are quieter as the lockdown has been respected. In Mozambique and Tanzania, the streets are still pretty much the same as usual. So that's it from me, just to say that these mini-surveys have identified that African cities are facing unique transport-related challenges during times of COVID-19. Further research, more detailed research than that we've done so far, and also action are needed for us to be able to address both COVID safety and road safety. Amend delivers safe and healthy journeys and improved environments in developing countries. Our work saves lives and makes life better. Thank you.
Let me now welcome Kristina Jasiunaite from World Bicycle Relief. Based in Germany but operating mainly in Africa, she is one more of TUMI's remarkable women in the transport sector, bringing the bike to as many people as possible.
First thing that I could think of
governments could help by recognizing bicycle as essential goods. So bicycles and their spare parts can cross the borders, can be assembled, sold, and delivered where they are needed most. Also, they could help providing infrastructure, temporary and permanent. This is particularly important in urban environment. And I would say last but not least, governments can promote the use of bikes through the legislation and by simple encouragement too. It's very nice to see that many governments and city mayors are recognizing and uplifting the value of the bike in these weeks since COVID-19. Bogota, Colombia is installing tens of kilometers of emergency cycleways to keep people moving. The mayor describes cycling as one of the most hygienic alternatives for the prevention of the virus. Uganda's president urges the citizens to ride bicycles after suspending all public means of transport. NGOs on the other side can leverage the use of bicycles by incorporating it in their program design for prevention, for mitigation, and recovery efforts. Mobility is essential for development. A strong, reliable bicycle is, in first place, cost-effective, hence it can reach large number of people within short time. Second, it's climate-friendly and inclusive form of transportation. Men, women, children can ride it. Third, it's a form of mobility that is easy to scale, even in the areas where there is no infrastructure. A simple footpath is enough for bicycle to ride on. And fourth, many NGOs are working so hard on important missions. Nearly every impact could be increased with a reliable bicycle there. Compared to walking, one can carry 5 times as much cargo or move 4 times faster, which saves 3 hours every 15 kilometers travel. So I think there's reasons to do that. I think we are entering a new era of cycling. It started gaining momentum before the pandemic hit the world. Climate protection efforts, the need for more human-centered transportation solutions for growing urban population, as well as technological breakthroughs, example e-bikes, have been fueling the momentum already. The United Nations recently dedicated June 3rd as World Bicycle Day. This year we are preparing to celebrate the bike as a pedal-driven growth engine for the 3rd time. COVID-19 has actually forced more governments to think outside the box. So therefore both public and policymakers are experiencing a huge positive impact on air quality, for example, with less fossil fuel transportation on our roads. Millions of people are rediscovering and experiencing the bicycle as an independent form of transportation, which makes it easy to go from A to B, practicing the social distancing. It's affordable and most importantly, it's fun. So yeah, I'm actually sure that we are just right in the beginning of a new cycling era. World Bicycle Relief is an international non-government organization that mobilizes people through the power of bicycles. It was founded after the Asian tsunami in 2005. Over the last 15 years, we have delivered more than 500,000 bicycles to school children, healthcare workers, and entrepreneurs. Health has always been core part of World Bicycle Relief's programming. In the rural areas where we work most of the time, healthcare systems are very quickly overburdened. Water and hygiene are often out of reach. Clinics lack adequate equipment. And the distances that patients must travel to reach healthcare facilities are often prohibitive. That's why many healthcare workers desperately need mobility solutions to reach people and inform as well as treat them. World Bicycle Relief is now allocating 500 bicycles to each of our program countries in Zambia, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Malawi, and Colombia. Mobilized with the Buffalo Bicycle, the frontline healthcare volunteers will be empowered to play a critical role
in how these regions prepare, how they respond, and how they will recover from the impact of the COVID-19 public health as well as economic crisis, right? We are receiving numerous requests for more bicycles from our partner organizations in the field who are really experiencing a great need for mobility solutions, including Save the Children, Ministry of Health in Zambia, or Red Cross in Kenya, just to name a few. Therefore, we hope that we can find more funding partners to address this urgent need.
Thank you. With the rugged bikes, economic possibilities are opened to many people, and this is what is important now, a green economic recovery.
So I'm happy to hand over to my colleague Daniel Moser, who is going to discuss with Tonny Omwansa from the C4D lab in Nairobi about the current situation across Africa.
We heard a lot of
Hello, Tonny Omwansa. I'm very happy to have you today live on TUMI TV. So we are today covering the globe. We had a session on Asia, Europe, and Africa today already. And now we have you live on TUMI TV. You are a professor at the University of Nairobi, and you are leading the TUMI Startup Accelerator, which is called now African Mobility Initiative, as we brought on Shell Foundation as a partner. And you have the in-depth insight of how transport is being shaped by the COVID-19 pandemic in Kenya and East Africa. And you also can give us some insights around business development and how sustainable mobility business models might be affected. So first of all, let me thank you for coming live on TUMI TV today. And I would like to ask you one initial question is, how is the situation right now? How are you doing? And what is the transport situation in Nairobi at the moment?
Yeah, thanks very much for hosting me. Very excited to be here live and engaging with the TUMI. We've had lots and lots of conversations over the last few years. I'm speaking from Nairobi. Of course, lockdown is the order of the day. You know, people function officially from 7 in the morning to 7 in the evening, and people must be home. Of course, movement in the city and in between cities has now been limited. For example, you cannot travel from Nairobi to Mombasa and vice versa, you know. And then, so that has a bearing on, movement in town and between towns. More the formal transport system, I kind of feel like it has gotten a bit neater because the regulation is that, you can only carry a few people in the bus or in a van or taxi. I see the informal sector quite really disrupted because people who use it are generally low-income earners. Now, I see a little bit of innovation in terms of people preferring to use alternative forms of transportation. I see motorcycles picking up quite well. I see a lot of use of apps, because people are more sensitive to, what time they can leave and when they can go and where they must go and so on and so forth. I see a lot of people using bicycles, as well as a lot of people choosing to walk instead. So there is a mindset shift in as much as people are constrained, but the desire to move is pushing people to innovate and think deeply about how they're moving. So it is not just automatic that you're going to get into a matatu, but now you want to be more and a little more efficient.
Can you hear me, Tonny?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Perfect. We had a short glitch in the audio, I believe, but thanks for that comprehensive answer. I think it's very interesting to see how informal transport is being impacted. And I especially believe that perspective which you brought on, that there is quite a challenge also for marginalized groups, people in the lower income brackets to deal with this. So do you see any motivation also from the government point of view to expand on walking infrastructure and cycling infrastructure What kind of perspectives do you see there in terms of reacting to COVID-19?
Yeah, so I'm seeing, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
So there are a couple of ideas that I'm seeing. I mean, there's pressure from government, there is pressure from the consumers, expecting certain kind of services as we go forward. The demand towards modernity and convenience, I think, has increased. So I'm seeing, riders kind of demanding technology so that they can feel comfortable. I'm seeing more of, pneumatic doors, CCTV cameras, Wi-Fi on vehicles and so forth, air conditioning, sanitizers and standard operating procedures and so forth, that are either coming from the the people who are moving, the consumer, or the government making this kind of requirements. So far, of course, government made a condition that there can only be so many people in a bus, otherwise there would be consequences. I do not know really, from a regulatory perspective, there is an encouragement. Right now, it is not really strongly enforced, but there's an encouragement towards non-motorized transportation, call it bicycles and the like. And then currently there is also, even for private cars, I mean, there's a regulation that you cannot have more than 3 people in a car. So the demand and the pressure from government, I think, are transforming things. Now, I'm also seeing entrepreneurs exploiting this and kind of coming up with the innovative solutions to try and tap into the vacuum that's kind of being created. And it's interesting to see. Now, there are some startups and young companies in private sector who are already disrupted because the business model doesn't seem to fit the new changes. But I'm also seeing some which are emerging, and they are riding a lot better as a result of COVID.
Okay, thank you, Tony. So when I understand you right, you're also seeing some innovations taking place at the moment. So what kind of role do you think can digitalization and also mobile applications play right now in the reaction towards COVID-19 in the transport sectors? Do you think there is an opportunity also to create more digital transport apps and services which help to create a safer and more sustainable transport sector?
Yes, I think there is an amazing opportunity in that area, and I have seen a number of startups beginning to exploit things like dissemination of information, be it travel information or similar. Things like integrating fare, transport cost, things like sharing, bicycle or vehicle sharing models. Data-driven or demand-driven transportation services. I see a lot of that. Deliveries, I think it's become a big deal. Motorcycles delivering stuff because, people are staying at home and so on and so forth. I've seen a little bit of attention towards renewable energy and clean energy thinking. And startups that are beginning to push that narrative. I'm seeing an element of a reduced automobile incentive for reduced automobile ownership. I mean, now people begin to think that really what matters is for me to move. Owning the car is a little bit of a secondary thing. And so innovative ideas that kind of tie up into these areas are picking up, and I can see a lot of potential going forward, because I think people are also beginning to accept that COVID is here to stay for a while, and even some of the behaviors and habits that have been formed as a result of this might not go back, because it takes about 30 days or so and people pick a new pattern, and that can stay for a long haul.
And you are also working in the field of startup acceleration. In fact, you are leading the biggest startup accelerator on urban mobility and sustainable urban mobility in the Eastern African region. And in that respect, do you foresee specific companies in picking up on these opportunities which you just outlined, and what kind of vision do you see in general for the work of startup acceleration in the sustainable mobility space?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one because, you know, we ran a call for startups. This is the second cohort that we're working on. So we ran a call for startups before COVID was in town. And, you know, we had over 100 applications and, you know, we went through the whole process of seeding. At this point in time, we are at somewhere around 40 or so, and we aim to only admit 8, hopefully, you know, 4 between, you know, Kenya and Uganda, and then we will extend that way. But, you know, there's some realization that, first of all, some of the startups that are signed up, their business models are actually shaken in this reality. At the same time, some of the startups are actually finding greater opportunity based on their business models, and others are pivoting on their business models in order to tap into some of the realities. Now, when I think about these, things like, you know, traveling is now reduced, there's pressure, you know, for online and deliveries and so on and so forth, I see startups that are pivoting. Now, from our perspective, there are a couple of things that we are now looking to do in light of the new reality. One is to help the startups to figure out how to pivot in a manner that reduces their risks as much as possible, because there's quite a number of unknowns in that process. Second is to support those who are kind of dropping off to begin to think that they can switch their mindset. And then 3, to support those who are already aligned and have seen a new opportunity and now need to scale their systems as fast as possible to tap to the opportunity. Otherwise, they might either collapse out of success, or they might just not know how to tap into that opportunity. So in all these cases, what we are seeing is the need for mindset shift to react to the moment and make the best out of it is absolutely necessary.
Thank you very much, Tonny Omwansa. This was Professor Tonny Omwansa from the University of Nairobi and the director of the Startup Accelerator at the University of Nairobi, focusing on urban mobility and sustainable urban mobility business models. And it's great to see, in fact, that we can observe and detect this uptick of demand for sustainable business models even before and in the COVID crisis. And we hope that we can see much more support also going in this direction, shaping the future of transport and the transport business models which help to shape the future in a way that is more sustainable and more climate friendly. So thank you very much, Tonny, for coming on air live with us in TUMI TV, and we hope you're having a great day in lockdown Nairobi. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm still in the house trying to make the best of what I can, and I really appreciate the support and the energy of TUMI. We have a few more partners jumping in, and I think we have a bright future, all factors constant. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tonny. And with these final words, I'm giving back to the studio. Thank you very much, Tonny, and have a great day.
All right, bye-bye.
We heard a lot of encouraging voices from Africa, but also the reminder that many people are hit very hard by this crisis. This crisis needs a global response. Part of it must be to make public transport safer. TUMI and its partners are following this goal. Before we now have a look at the European continent, enjoy a few videos of our partners.
El Sustainable Transport Award es la fuerza que mueve la agenda de movilidad en las ciudades.
Since 2005, the award has recognized cities that have decreased greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution.
Esto es un reconocimiento a los héroes y un reconocimiento a las ciudades que han logrado avances en movilidad sostenible.
Este premio es importante porque permite a las autoridades locales y a los campeones de proyecto mostrar que sus esfuerzos han valido la pena, que han sido reconocidos internacionalmente y que pueden seguir avanzando en esa senda de sostenibilidad.
Ciudades como Bogotá, París, Londres, Sao Paulo, Ahmedabad, Ishan, que se han convertido en ejemplos.
If your city has done something that is noteworthy, if your city has put in the sweat that is required and has pushed to implement something that for your city is visionary and has taken a lot of effort and has shown results, then your city is ready to be nominated for the Sustainable Transport Award.
Los invitamos a que se sumen, a que participen, a que se registren para este importante premio. Así que únanse al Sustainable Transport Award y muchas gracias a todos los organizadores que lo apoyan.
Micromobility is a new term we use to include all the variations of small vehicles or personal mobility devices. While this started with bike sharing, we now have the rise of electric scooters and electric bikes.